Has Verbove become a stalemate? Is Russia holding on to its second line of defenses? It depends on who you ask. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's September 3rd, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, we have what they're saying is just frontline updates, which is a pretty vague description of what has been happening. But as you guys can probably see, other than some forces being repositioned in and around Takhmyk, this is in all likelihood Russian forces digging in. I think one of their biggest fears is a breakthrough in which their forces or Ukrainian forces are able to push down this road and really start to threaten Takhmyk, which is heavily defended. You can see an entire second layer of trenches in both Takhmyk and this town of Ochedoviate. It's almost certainly Takhmyk is a central logistics hub for the Russian war effort. And undoubtedly, these troops here are digging in, preparing fighting positions, deploying mines, and doing a variety of defense constructing tasks. You can see there's some defensive lines that have already been built, so they're likely improving those positions. That's likely why they've been deployed here. I think that's a huge fear for Russian troops. But as you guys can see, the most recent updates show that this second line of defenses here is contested, sure, on the northern side, but it's also increasingly being pressured here along this southern axis. And so, one, for these troops, it's a bad state to be in, but also it can it forces Russian forces to make hard choices about which axis they're going to defend. Now, obviously, these are pretty close together, so troops defending one can easily be shifted to the other, but it's a tight spot. And if Ukraine can get into these trench lines, it'll be much easier to roll Russian forces around. So that is what they are working so hard to avoid. In terms of other changes to the front line, there's really not a lot here. A very minor update near Klitschivka. You can see this is how this is the first, and then the second you can see Russian forces quietly withdrawing. It looks like just a block or so, but an indicator that, again, Ukrainian forces are continuing to surge in and around Klitschivka. And I believe there's just there should be one other change. Yeah. Right up here near Novohorivka. This is in the north. Again, you're looking at Russian forces occupying somewhat more of this forested area. Again, much of the reporting I've heard is that this entire Kharkiv front is fairly lightly manned. And so when you have these changes in front lines, again, I really wouldn't put too much stock in them unless it's an entire village changing hands. When we look over at the combat map, you can see, again, limited reporting happening in the Zaporizhzhia region. Doesn't mean nothing's happening. It just means that the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense is not confirming their operations one way or another, which is generally just a good practice for OPSEC. Russian artillery continuing to throw a lot of rounds, likely trying to disrupt Ukrainian efforts to reinforce or exploit breakthroughs. But you can also see along the Eastern Front, they're reporting just 30 Russian combat engagements. Undoubtedly, there are more localized ones, but their primary offensive work is still in Donetsk, which to me indicates that Russian command still has not really centralized. This idea that they're going to launch continual counterattacks makes sense in Zaporizhzhia. It's important to attack to fix the enemy in position. But when you have these sort of concentrated, scaled attacks, you wonder if they're really using their manpower for the best purposes, right? Much of this manpower would be better put, perhaps, being redirected to Verbove. And as we've seen, a lot of Russian flags, a lot of Russian troop formations are already in Verbove. It's a huge concentration of Russian forces, very heavy fighting. and this is sort of the problem when you have this maneuver or positional style of warfare, when the lines aren't changing very fast and it's moving only at the speed of foot, right? What you have is that when you have Ukrainians begin to generate momentum without mechanized forces to move with lightning speed, Russia has time to have its other units pack up, reposition, and get on and flood in on the defensive. And so you end up, as you start to gain momentum, the enemy's able to bring forces in to blunt it. And then if you said, okay, well, we're going to go somewhere else, you have to pull your forces out, reposition them. The enemy has time to reposition its own forces to blunt your efforts there. And so unless you can maneuver as the force on offense faster than your enemy can reposition their own troops, you're always going to get this problem. It's imagine if you were to fight even a very skilled boxer, but the boxer had to move at 1/4 speed. You would see his punch slowly moving towards your face, and you would easily block it, right? And even if he was to throw highly skilled combinations, right, he would never be able to deceive you because you would have so much time to respond to each and every blow. You would look like a highly skilled boxer, but it doesn't actually take that much skill when the pace of combat is so slow. And this isn't just mechanization. This is also a function of mines and obstacles. This is a function of the use of these mines and obstacles that concentrate forces. This is when you build these defensive fortifications like trenches that take a long time to clear, right? All of those things slow the pace of combat in such a way that it enables, again, the Russian forces, even if they're not necessarily as skilled or highly trained, but they can be responsive to each individual blow as Ukraine tries to throw it. Again, I want to emphasize that this is a feature of warfare. It is not a criticism, as we've talked about. I think Ukrainian and Russian generals are not crazy. I think they are as intelligent in many ways. They're as intelligent as any U.S. general. In some ways, perhaps more so. But they're constrained. Both sides are constrained by the troops they have in front of them, the tactical and strategic situation on the ground, the equipment that their forces have, and the solutions they come to, right, are not necessarily ones that, are textbook, but they are still how you have to fight in this environment. Anyway, guys, if you've been on the live stream, you know that I recently launched something I've been working on for almost a year, Strike Gum Pre-Workout Gum. This was inspired by my time in Afghanistan when I used to have to take these gross energy drinks called Rippets. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a Rippet. They're so gross. And if you wanted energy and focus to work out after a long combat patrol, that's what you'd have to chug. And so your stomach would feel gross. It was awful. So I worked with a manufacturer in Colorado to take an entire scoop of pre-workout and distill it inside a single piece of gum. So if you wanted to try your Strike Gum, you can go to strikegum.com. We have packs, we have trays if you're interested, right? The trays are actually as many servings as a standard tub of pre-workout, but at 65, 70% of the cost. So it's actually more convenient than a pre-workout where you have to scoop and mix shakes, and it's also more cost effective. But if you're interested, we also ship now to Europe, to Canada. We've got all our international shipping set up. So I know I have a big international audience, and you guys can finally get in on the action. And of course, if you're interested in becoming an affiliate, we have an affiliate program where 10% of all the sales that come through your link go to you. But best of all, 50% of the profits of this first production run of Strike Gum are going to be donated to Ukrainian charities that help civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So Ukraine wins. You guys get to energize your workouts. And I appreciate everybody that's ordered some Strike Gum so far. Okay, moving on to what I thought was most interesting, I went on to X, or formerly known as Twitter, and just tried to see what the latest updates on the Verbove situation are, since generally these maps are about 2 days old. All right, there's reportedly some Russian reinforcements being targeted outside Verbove. You can see to the south here by one report. You also have, of course, a lot of strikes happening. It looks like this is maybe a heat map of some of the activity in and around Verbove. Oh, sorry, no, this is an elevation map. Let's see if we can find some updates to control. I actually recently saw Arturay had an update. Let's see if we can find it. He has pretty good sources inside Ukraine. Basically, he says Verbove Rotina forces are counterattacking. There's some battles near these forested positions near Novoprokopivka and Verbove. There is some enemy troops who have left, who withdrawn from Novohorovka. Which, let's see if we can triangulate where that is. But that could be a sign. Yeah. Novohorovka looks like it is. I'm not sure. Interesting. Oh, maybe here? Maybe it's a reference to this area, Novoprokopovka. I'm not sure. Let's see if we can do a little copy paste, actually. Oh, it won't let me because it's X, never change. Novohorovka. Okay. Let's try to find it. Anything? No. Okay. I don't know what it's a reference to. It could be a reference probably to Novoprokopivka up here where Russian troops are withdrawing. That would make sense. It looks like an area of the front line that's under a lot of pressure. It could also, which would be really significant, if it's Novoprokopivka, that would be very bad news for Russia if they were to withdraw from this town, since it would indicate that, again, there's continual movement along this roadway, which seems, based on Russian troop deployments, to be their number one greatest fear. Remember, if they were to penetrate deeper into these lines, right, you can see that they have some defense in depth here. They can afford to withdraw before they run up against their primary defensive lines. But again, the danger would be is if Ukrainian forces to the east of this roadway are able to infiltrate Russian defensive lines, then they're going to have a real problem on their hands as Ukrainian forces barrel down from the north and potentially from the east. So I think that might be the latest updates here, guys. That's really all I had. Thank you guys so much. And of course, a special shout out to all the members of combatvetnews.com, especially our colonel tier members, our lieutenant tier members, and really all the members of Combat Vet News. I couldn't do this without any of you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.